Hello and welcome back. So let's talk about writers, modern writers, television shows and media. This video has been in the works for a little while, and finding the words for this video has been an interesting vibe, to say the least, on the subject. So let's talk about it. Most modern TV shows, be it Kurtzman's Trek, Rings of Power, modern Star Wars, comic books as well, DC and Marvel, they seem to have this hatred of canon, of actual written canon, and it's kind of oddly fascinating to watch. It's also kind of sad to watch. By the way, I offer memberships on this channel, and I also have a Patreon, so if you guys are interested, the link is down below. So, what I will say is that as a writer, you have to write outside of yourself. That's one of the big things. You cannot always have you reflected back at you in the content you create. And when you are writing for something, such as writing a TV show based on the works of Tolkien or Trek, there is a massive amount of stuff. Doctor Who is also the same. There is this massive amount of material to draw from, to use, to work from. But a lot of modern writers don't care about it. And it can be small things. For example, the replicators in Star Trek Discovery. The in-universe technology doesn't quite line up to the time period in which it's set. Rings of Power, which is completely rewritten, that it bears no resemblance to anything Tolkien wrote or created at all. Disney's Star Wars, the destruction of any male character in that show is fascinating as well. We see this on a rinse and repeat, and my humble personal opinions on this is there are so many people who are so wrapped up in their own identity, their own who they are, that they forget that they cannot put themselves in everything they write. And it is sad to watch, and it is interesting to watch, and you see these articles, canon doesn't matter, we need to be free of canon, writers need creative freedom to create themselves. Why do you have to write yourself? Do you not know anything about other people? Can you not see outside of your own life and your own experience? It's a fascinating thing. Sometimes I feel like Jane Goodall in Gorillas in the Mist. I mean, it is oddly bizarre to watch, and you keep seeing it over and over again. The idea that people also forget the past. People go, well, Star Trek's never been diverse. It's never had diversity and representation. Yes, it has. Star Trek always has had. The difference being is that in modern Trek, they're not writing characters, they're writing archetypes and stereotypes. For example, the angry black woman stereotype, i.e. diverse space Jesus herself, Michael. I've never understood why they called her that. On the other side of it, it's this weird bubble that I keep seeing. For example, Galadriel is obviously, in Rings of Power, very much a self-insert for one of the writing and production team. Writers can't write outside of themselves because to them that's all that matters. They don't care about canon, they don't care about character, they don't care about story. It's all about putting the message first. There is a fascinating TED Talk somewhere on YouTube in which a well-known writer talks about that, and she stands on the precipice and says, well, you need to put the message first. And I do love the fact that I get this comment a lot. In my videos, you snowflakes can't define what woke means. Yes, you can. Woke media is the idea of putting a political narrative or a socio-political narrative ahead of characterization, story, and actual plot. I.e. the Rings of Power is a prime example of that. And it's just this fascinating insight into how these people work. I think an element of it is narcissism. I think this idea of one's self-identity being more important than anything else, where everyone talks about individuality and we don't need labels, but they want labels and they want groupthink. I mean, ultimately, I'm very anti-censorship, and I always find it interesting. They've done it with Interview with a Vampire as well, where they've stripped the work back and they've taken out all the Anne Rice from the work. It bears no, barring character names and some basic plot points and story, it actually bears almost no resemblance to Anne Rice's novels in any way, shape or form. Which is kind of, again, sad to witness. You have this big, rich world to draw from. Why are you not using it? Why are you not using these characters and this story and this narrative that's rich and big and just adapting the work? Instead, you're rewriting it. You're putting your own politics within the work. This whole idea that everything has to represent modernity, and modernity can be a positive thing, but it can also be a negative thing. In Rings of Power, prime example. This idea of stripping the work back and rewriting it to fit, to insert your own politics, your own beliefs, your own everything into the body of work is a form of narcissism. And if you're only using these works to get your opinion across rather than actually creating, there are so many writers that need to be fired. The Witcher, Henry Cavill, the writers actively hate the source material. They actively hate it. And they mock it. The games, the books, whatever. Then you have, I mean, this whole list of this kind of destruction, it's almost cultural Marxism in many ways. That the idea that everything has to be erased and restarted to fit a modern narrative, erase history, erase the past. If you want to write an original story and create something original, create something original. Don't just bastardize other people's work. It's a concept that most people don't understand, and ultimately I think that we're going to see it more and more. These properties keep flopping or not doing well, and they become a joke and reduced to memes because that's all they are. There is no great depth to the Rings of Power. Kurtzman's Trek literally exists purely for a political narrative over story and characterization. When you write characters that are literally walking stereotypes, that is a problem. But ultimately, if you see yourself in those stereotypes to that extreme, you're also the problem. This kind of idea that everything that happened before 5 years ago doesn't matter and we need to start it from scratch it's reductive and it's destructive. When you have Marvel and DC actively calling for writers who are not fans to create new comic books, to write for them, that is a major problem. And if you are doing that, ultimately it strips away any meaning of the work. You need people who know the characters and the source material to create these things. It'll be interesting what they do, but when you look at the actual viewing figures on many of these shows, and ultimately, like Kurtzman's Trek, the viewing numbers are actually appalling. But it purely exists to be content rather than Star Trek, which is a shame. Doctor Who is the same. The numbers are appalling, but instead of actually looking at the real problems, they attack the fans. They attack the people and call you ists and phobes and just start this war. This is not how to create something. None of these writers want to create anything. They want to destroy it. That's it. And I firmly believe that. It is an act of cultural destruction in many ways. These things are far bigger than them, despite what their egos tell them. So I'm going to leave this here. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys later.